So hi everyone. So welcome to this admission talk of the Biomedical Engineering program of the Faculty of Engineering at Hong Kong U. So my name is Kevin. I'm the program director of the program. So what you're going to hear today is basically will be about what exactly the biomedical engineering is about, and more important is what you would expect from this program. So first of all, let me just give you some background of our program. Actually, our program established in 2002, actually more than 10 years ago. So we have been training more than hundreds of graduate students in a biomedical engineering program. So we started with the title of Medical Engineering Program. So starting from last year, so we have a major reform of our curriculum in order to cope with the ever-changing development of the biomedical engineering. So we retitled it as a Biomedical Engineering Program, and we have a lot of major and significant changes in our program. So you will actually hear more about what are the major changes in our program. So first of all, let me just talk about what exactly biomedical engineering is about. So first of all, definitely you don't expect that we are training medical doctors. And also, you would not expect that we are training a classical or typical engineers. So what exactly biomedical engineering is about? So biomedical engineering is basically, it's about how to apply engineering analysis and techniques to understand the working principle of living systems. So what do we mean by living system? So anything that you can imagine from human, for example. So you can think of nowadays, we can use innovative technologies. For example, you can actually pick up the electrical signals that because of our muscle movement, and you can use that as a signal to control electronic devices or computers. So you can actually use this as using the application is now what we call the computer human interface. And also, you can actually develop nowadays novel technologies that you can understand better how biology and how animals actually works. For example, what you are seeing in the videos right now is actually a little mouse actually running around in a chamber. So perhaps you're not very clear to see that, but basically the scientist here is actually putting a very tiny optical fibers sticking on the head of the mouse. So what it does is basically try to deliver the light to stimulate the brain. Okay, so such a way that we can actually use light to control the motion of the mouse. So it might sound a little bit scary, but actually this is actually how we can actually use technologies, engineering principles to understand biology better. In this case, is how brain works. So more than that, nowadays people also develop technologies to visualize, how the animals actually develops from embryos, babies, in many different animal models. For example, as simple as a fruit fly. And even down to a very, very small and tiny scale, people develop very sophisticated microscopy techniques to visualize and understand how cells are actually interact with each other. For example, you can imagine that how the blood cells actually attack the cancer cells, right? You are seeing in these videos. And more than that, so ultimately, biomedical engineers is going to use this knowledge of engineering or technologies to address the unmet needs in the biomedicines, especially in our aging societies. Whether or not basically nowadays we are facing a very significant and serious problem of aging. So on this planet, okay, basically the populations over 60 years old will be basically double or even tripled in the next 20 or 30 years. So we're actually facing a huge problem right now how we can actually use technologies to provide a better healthcare, and that's actually how and what the biomedical engineering students would need to learn and later on to contribute to the healthcare and even the society. So let me introduce two particular examples that to understand how the biomedical engineering could contribute to the healthcare and to solve the aging society problems. So first of all, let me introduce how the biomedical engineering could address the unmet needs of the heart disease diagnosis. So heart disease in Hong Kong has been the second leading cause of death in Hong Kong. So this is actually a very critical disease condition that whenever you look into the very major blood vessels, which is actually the coronary arteries, and that is the condition whenever there's a blockage or certain tissues that block the blood flow. And whenever there's a blood flow blockage there, so that would be a very fatal condition, and the individuals would basically die within minutes. So what would be the technologies nowadays available in order to tell whether or not the patients will get any problems with the heart? So there are many different technologies, such as there's a technique called the ECG. So that is a technique that you can pick up the electrical signals or electrical activities generated by your heart that you can tell what's going on and what's going wrong with the patients. And also you can use imaging technologies, for example, MRI, magnetic resonance imaging, so to see through the body, particularly look into the heart in actions to see what's going on and wrong again with the heart. And of course, you will now would realize that these technologies still are not able to get into the coronary artery to see what's going on exactly and how and why it would get blocked in the vessels. So in order to do that, you probably need to have a high resolution camera, just like a microscope, to put inside the blood vessels to see really what's going on. Of course, if you're familiar with the size of the microscope, you would see that they are pretty big. And even if you just take a camera of the microscope or even the sensor of the camera, these devices are still way too big to be put inside the blood vessels. So then how are we going to deal with this problem if we have any other good solutions? But it turns out there's actually good solutions to be able to help us to get the imaging tools inside the blood vessels, which is what we call a micro endoscope. This is actually made of a tiny optical fiber with the size of a human hair. So you can actually put inside the blood vessels, and you can just imagine that it's like a tiny ladle that you put into the blood vessels and to do what we call a radar scan. Okay, and you can basically think of when the when the optical fibers is being put and navigated through the blood vessels and doing this kind of radar scan, so you can basically reconstruct the entire images of the blood vessels. And indeed, this is actually being practiced right now clinically in the hospitals, and particularly this technique is what we call the optical coherence tomography. So this is actually an optical imaging techniques making use of the microendoscopy. So this technique is basically using, again, the optical fiber. It's very tiny. So what you're seeing in this video is it's very tiny, like a human hair. Okay, you can see that right now the gentleman here is actually holding this fiber. It's very tiny. It's not only you can image the surface of the tissues, in this case it's the palm or the fingers, but you can actually visualize the tissues underneath the surface. So that's actually a very powerful tool for us to actually visualize a very detailed view of the blood vessels. So it's actually much more high resolutions than the current technologies, for example, ultrasound imaging, and it helps us to visualize in a very high resolution, see the blood vessels structures. So on the right-hand side, you can actually see that there are two particular examples. Patients A videos basically show you a very healthy individuals. You can see that. You can see a very clear blood vessel structures. And on the right-hand side, patient B, you can actually clearly see that the structure is a bit more messier, and you can see clearly some of the tissues that deposited on the sidewall of the blood vessels. And you can also, after that, you can rely on the computational methods to reconstruct the entire image of the vessels, so you can have a better view of the image. And this is actually very important to have a clear visualization for the surgeon during the operation, because that actually helps to guide the decision making during surgery to put the stent within which that you would inflate the balloon within the blood vessels. This is exactly how the surgery right now to help to alleviate the problem of the coronary artery disease. So there's another second problem or second example that I would like to share with you. Is how the biomedical engineering biomedical engineering innovations and technologies to help this cancer diagnosis. Perhaps this is a little bit more closer to our campus, because this is exactly what I myself is actually working on in research together with my team members in the lab at Hong Kong U. So let me tell you about the grand challenge right now in cancer diagnosis, particularly in one of the techniques is what we call the liquid biopsy. So this is a technique or medical procedures that the doctors or the medical practitioners would take a small amount of blood samples from the patients. And then what we want to find out is, we want to see whether or not you will have the cancer cells, or what we call the circulating tumor cells, in the blood. So if you can find that, then we'll have a better decision making to do the cancer treatment later on. But however, this is actually a very, very challenging problem because circulating tumor cell is extremely rare. We are talking about only one or a few circulating tumor cells in a 1 milliliter of blood. So extremely rare. So in order to find these tiny amount of circulating tumor cell, extremely difficult. So in our lab, so we actually combine multiple technologies together to provide solutions. For instance, we develop advanced imaging technologies together with laser technologies and what we call a microfluidic technologies together to make a very tiny device, what we call the microfluidic chips. So we put these chips under the light microscope that we developed, and we take the sample, the blood sample from the patients, so that now these blood samples would flow through within this channel, okay, and in a very high speed, in a controllable manner. So you can imagine that individual cells or blood cells that we extract from patients now is flowing along this channel at a very high speed in a single file, such a way that combining our high-speed imaging technologies, we're able to capture the images of thousands or even millions of single blood cells in a very manageable amount of time. So we're talking about within minutes or so, you can capture millions of single cells images. And more important is that after you capture all these images, then you can, by using the image processing techniques or algorithm, then you can identify what would be the possible cancer cells that you can identify from these big pools of images. So this is really a combination of many different technologies together. So we are not relying on human inspections and whatsoever. So we actually developed a very advanced computing system and incorporating what we now call the artificial intelligence or deep learning to automatically recognize the features or the identity of the cancer cells. And our preliminary result actually showed a very nice accuracies. So this is really one of the examples that I would like to show you that how innovative technologies in biomedical engineering could really help advance the clinical diagnosis. And just to let you know, okay, our team is actually made of many young talents, and all the faces that you are seeing here, they are all the graduate students from our biomedical engineering program over the years. So back to our program. So here in our programs, we have been emphasizing not only, first of all, to understand what are the actual problems in the clinical areas or biological areas, and then to provide solutions for them. But more important is how we can understand these problems and to inspire new technologies or new engineering aspects. Just like the very first example that I gave about using the muscle activities to control electronic devices. And not only that, okay, how we can actually use technologies to not only solve the problem, but actually create new discoveries. So for example, just like the example I gave in the very beginning, how we can use laser or optical stimulation, brain stimulation to understand how brain actually works. So in our program, that's something that you can already imagine that we required a very broad-based training across different disciplines. This is really what we emphasize in terms of the interdisciplinary training all the way from the very foundation years in year 1 and 2. So our student will be having the opportunities to get in touch with a lot of different aspects, all the way from mathematics, electrical and mechanical engineering, and of course, the biomedical sciences, including biologies and chemistries. And one of the key advantages that I think that were key strength in our program is that a lot of our teachers are actually at the forefront of their own expertise in biomedical engineering research. So this is just tip of the iceberg examples that I would like to show you. And more important, you can also see that when the highlighted green circles and also the red circles, they are actually the medical doctors or the medical researchers in Faculty of Medicine and our core teachers in our programs. So what I would like to show you here is we are actually having a very close connections and collaborations in the research activities. And we are actually taking this advantage and leverage this strength in our program, because now we can actually create this kind of closely connected and interdisciplinary learning environment provided both by the Faculty of Engineering and the Faculty of Medicine together, so to provide in many areas of advanced BME training. So you can imagine during the advanced year 3 to year 4, so we will have 4 main areas covering the biomaterial technologies, tissue engineering technologies, and biomechanics or biotransports, and also the genomic sciences and bioinformatics, and also the biomedical imaging. So these are actually the 4 main areas that the students would expect and will have a chance to explore further in their senior years of training. And not only the senior year, so we actually emphasize a lot about the hands-on experience, kind of learning experience for our students. So in the early year, year 1, so we actually developed this or launched this program called the Lab Shadowing Program to let the year 1 and year 2 students to go to the research lab, work behind the shadow of the senior researchers, PhD students, or postdoctoral researchers to understand how exactly BME research or advanced BME technology is being developed in our laboratories. So as I said, we have been emphasizing a lot in terms of the hands-on experience in biomedical engineering. So here are just some of the examples. So we have courses developed asking the student to develop the medical devices from scratch. So this is actually a video showing you one of the activities during the course that so once they develop their own devices from scratch, so we have a test called the drop test. So basically the test whether their devices is robust enough. So this is something that we also want to let the student know whenever they develop something, they have to be robust enough and stable enough to be used in the actual applications. So we have many laboratories to provide to the students for different laboratory experience in different courses, both stationed in the main campus here and also in the Faculty of Medicine campus. During the 3rd year summertime, and we also offer this professional summer training to the students. So basically, they will go to the university laboratories or the hospitals or other BME-related or biotech companies to work as a summer intern for the period of 6 to 8 weeks. So that will be another hands-on experience for them to experience what exactly the real-world biomedical engineering is about. And towards the final year, so that is what we call the capstone experience training. So this is what we call the final year project. So this is an year-long project, individual projects that you have to work on a very specific BME topic and supervised by 2 professors, one from the engineering faculties and the other one from the Faculty of Medicine or from medical doctors in hospitals or some industrial advisors from the biotech companies. So there's actually many more opportunities, not inside the classroom, but outside the classroom. So here just list some of the key opportunities. Definitely, we encourage a lot about the overseas exchange. We also have many different research programs for the undergrad students, for those who are very interested in pursuing further study later on after graduation. And then we have many other competitions out there for the students to participate whenever they have any great ideas that they want to develop certain technologies or concepts related to healthcare. These are all the opportunities that are available to our students. So our student has been doing very well over the years. So these are just some of the examples of our students, getting different types of awards and prizes in the past few years. So in terms of the career prospects, so here I just can give you some examples. So actually around like 1/3 of our students, according to our statistics, they would prefer to go on for further study. So when I say further study, I refer to like a master's degree or PhD degree of studies in BME-related research, either in Hong Kong or in other universities overseas. So here are just some of the very distinguished alumni graduated from our program. Nowadays, they are the university professors here in Hong Kong or other universities in overseas as well. So our students also have a chance, if you aspire to become medical doctors, that's actually a pathway as well for them to go on to practice as medical doctors in other universities. So we have examples in the previous years go to other universities overseas for medical schools as well. And a very recent year, perhaps a lot of you may also notice that this kind of the atmosphere about the entrepreneurship. So we also encourage our students, whenever they have any great ideas about the techniques or concepts in BME, they can actually go out to basically start their business. So indeed, there's actually several successful cases in coming out from our program, making a startup based on the student projects or the research projects from our program. So other than that, the students could also opt for many opportunities in public or private sectors. In public sectors, we are talking about the biomedical engineer positions in, for example, in EMSD or Hong Kong Productivity Councils or hospital authorities. They also have the opportunities or posts related to the BME disciplines. And we also have a very wide range of biotech companies or medical device companies available right now here in Hong Kong. They have branches hiring people with the knowledge or background in BME. So these are actually the activities or opportunities available right now in Hong Kong. So perhaps this is really what I would like to show you as a broad summary of our program and also what BME in general is about. So this is a website of our BME program. So you're welcome to go into the pages in the website. You can take a look and you can get more information about that. And if you have any questions, feel free to send us an email, then we will be happy to communicate with you and let you know more about our program. So thank you very much.